Welcome back. In this special episode, we're checking out highlights of the 2021 C4ISRNet conference. Up next, reporter Andrew Eversden talks with Lieutenant General Dennis Crall.
To get started here, JADC2 is obviously one of the most talked about programs in the Pentagon right now, and I imagine there's probably quite a bit of pressure on everyone involved to deliver. What do your bosses tell you about the importance of delivering on JADC2?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share a few thoughts on JADC2 this morning. It's an interesting question. The pressure, I think, is really internal and shared by all of us. We have a warfighting need. That's really where the pressure comes from. And that's to deliver in the fight that we expect to have. You're always preparing and always training. And that fight's going to be more automated. It's going to be moved at a faster speed. And we're going to have machines working well with humans in order to meet that pace. So the real pressure is on to deliver what I think are the four components to make JADC2 work in the department. That first one has already launched, and that was really the rebranding and reestablishing of our JADC2 cross-functional team. That's the engine room behind doing a lot of the detailed work that leads to real milestones and deliverables. The second piece is the strategy, which we're hoping is near running through the building for its signatures. We briefed that up through the Deputy Secretary and hope soon to get that signed by the Secretary, which will codify the lines of effort and really our approach to delivering the capabilities required in JADC2. The other two items are hot on their heels, and that would be the posture review or gap analysis. We're nearly complete with that. If the strategy is that benchmark of what you want to do, the posture review is that document that comes back and says, here's what you're missing in order to get there. That's a pretty significant requirement for funding plans to make sure that these things are resourced properly. And then the most important aspect, which we've already started to fill out, is the implementation plan. Everything that happens to the left of the implementation plan is just planning. The implementation plan lays down the plan of attack and milestones, the very specific delivery dates, and what type of delivery we're expecting and when. So really the rubber meets the road in that document, and we've just now started to identify the leads for those discrete pieces of JADC2 and when those delivery order and timelines will be met. So that's really where the pressure lies, and I think we're on a pretty good pace to deliver.
Yeah, and as we talk about, Joint All-Domain Command and Control, obviously it's a program that will take place over several years. What are some of the key milestones, though, that you're hoping to hit maybe in the next calendar year?
Yeah, the one that's right up in front of us is this is about learning by doing. So we can write a lot, and the documentation is necessary to have a durable, repeatable, provable way to do this in an orderly fashion and make sure you're satisfied with the results. But there's also a part of us that we want to start now and experiment to inform those products. So really what I think is a pretty good accomplishment, in addition to getting a JADC2 strategy written, briefed even to the Hill with the PSMs, the professional staff members, and driving some of these mission threads, it's starting that work on demonstrations and mission threads that has me most excited. So we picked a few. We've had about 80 submissions. We've whittled that down to really 2 viable categories and about 14 test cases. We're going to burn these fires bright. So we're pretty excited about that. And the other is really making us a data-centric organization, identifying the policies that need to change in the department to make sure that we can share, access, store, and, settle the ownership matters around data. So those are some pretty heavy lifts that we've made great progress on already.
Yeah. There's been some talk in the press recently about, the JADC2 cross-functional team, DoD, Congress, discussing reforms to the acquisition process to get some of those experimental technologies into acquisition programs. What sort of options, what needs to change, and what sort of options are you exploring there?
Well, first you start with the condition, and that is that we live with a set of acquisition rules as far as pace goes that probably fit the Cold War era very well. When you look at the threat at that time, moving at 3, 5, 10-year pace was acceptable. And most of the equipment that was procured during that time lent itself to long lead and long build times. physical things you can touch and see and the like. In the digital age, that mechanism doesn't work well. Putting us on a 5-year POM cycle for funding, for example, makes it really challenging to identify a set of capabilities or requirements, lay out a 5-year plan of spending, and we end up getting yesterday's technology delivered tomorrow. By the time those funding streams come through and you execute those contracts, in many cases, the technology has already been surpassed. So I know that, again, Congress has reached out to us and has discussed options that they're looking at. In the crudest sense, I would probably say something akin to an investment capital fund, which the DoD doesn't have, money that could be earmarked, multi-use money. So it's not too specific, but allows that to be spent quickly. We could probably move faster to retire legacy, onboard, some modern things to get after it as well. So I think that there might be some appetite to explore things along those lines.